He said, go ahead.
Just getting out my proper script. All right, we will now call to order the Special Committee on Reducing Red Tape on Monday, January 27th at 3:03 PM. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Spencer. Vice Chair Oldenburg.
Aye. Here.
Alderman Ryan.
Here.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Here. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Sonier.
Here.
Chair Velasquez.
Present.
Alderwoman Keys.
Here.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And since we have quorum, I will entertain a motion for the approval of Monday, January 13th, 2025.
I move that we approve the minutes of Monday, January 13th, 2025.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Spencer. Vice Chair Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Ryan.
Aye.
Chair Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderwoman Keys.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sonier. Chair Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Sonier. We have 5 aye votes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now that we have approved the minutes, we will go on to board bills to review. And item number 1 is Board Bill number 14, introduced by Alderman Rasheen Aldrich. Madam Clerk, can you please read the summary?
Board Bill 114, introduced by Alderman Rasheen Aldrich, an ordinance which amends Chapter 8 of the St. Louis Revised Codes to streamline food truck operations.
Thank you. That was quite a summary of a summary. Alderman Aldrich, you are recognized on Board Bill 14.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. We try to keep things efficient in the 14th, so that's why it's a shorter summary. So today I am here to present Board Bill 14, which was a board bill that I originally filed back in April. But after the first hearing, I appreciate the committee's willingness to hear the bill. We knew that there was some changes that we needed to make in the legislation. So originally, a food truck ordinance was introduced here at the Board of Aldermen a little bit way back when, and with this committee looking to cut red tape from last session, and then this session, food truck was one of the things, after talking to some operators, learned that after they get their licenses and actually operate, there is some red tape around them being able to actually do their business. We'll probably come back next session and work hand in hand with you, Chairwoman, because I know me and you have discussed this of maybe looking at how we can change the way that they do their licensees. But mainly this piece of legislation is doing some cleanup, and with negotiations of, and I really appreciate GSL at the time, when we halted the legislation, we convened a roundtable of various stakeholders from GSL to the Restaurant Association. I know a representative from DNA, Downtown Neighborhood Association, was at the table, as well as somebody from the Central West End, SID and Neighborhood Association, as well as someone from the mayor's office, also the Parks Department, and somebody from the President's office and the Food Truck Association, to try to make sure that we all can get to a place where we cut some red tape for food trucks, but also respect our brick and mortars at the same time. So I do have a committee sub that I would like to bring forward to the committee to talk about some of the changes we made from the original bill into the committee sub, and would entertain a motion from any of my committee members to adopt it.
I will move to adopt committee substitute for Board Bill 14. Board Bill 14, committee substitute is now adopted.
You don't have a vote.
Oh, we have to vote. Yes, thank you. Madam Clerk, is there a call for previous roll?
Sure, previous roll.
We have to vote on adopting the bill,
Have
but
to
there's been a
vote.
call for previous roll.
Was there a call for previous roll?
Yes, I just called for previous roll, and I've heard no objections.
So who called previous roll?
Me.
Okay.
All right, with that, we've adopted the committee substitute for Board Bill 14.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, member of the committee. Also, Madam Clerk, I just got a text from the Alderwoman from the 7th asking for a link. It sounded like it was sent to her. So the committee substitute, I will go over some of the changes that from the negotiations that we made from the original bill to where we currently stand. So going section by section, you'll see in section 1, one of the biggest changes that we made is we amended the vending location to citywide vending districts, which includes streets that are adjacent to the zoning district, which I will have an amendment to address that. I know there was some concern, but first I want to go through the changes. So basically right now, instead of having all these different districts where they can't vend, we are saying that in the citywide district, that food trucks will be able to vend in zoning districts F through L. F through L is mainly the commercial and industrial area within the city of St. Louis. And again, we removed all the established districts with the exception of the WIF district and city park vending district. So the WIF district is a small district that sits between the riverfront, or it's really like right outside the Arch, where they have their own district that is in agreement with the city, where only type of operators can be there is folks who sell like popcorn and lemonade and other things that the Arch agree with for them to be able to sell. So we did not want to exclude that, and then we kept and expanded on the city park vending district, which I will get to here shortly. We also added a mobile food court, which now will be along 1200 to 1320 Market Street with mobile vendors operating under city regulations. I want to back up a little bit. We did make a change to the summary. Originally, the summary said an ordinance which amends Chapter 8, streamlining food truck operators, and we had changed that to say to streamline mobile food vendor operator. Because when you look at Chapter 8, even though the old summary said food truck, when you actually look at Chapter 8, they're defined by mobile food vendors. Another change that we made was, again, the new section that we added in vending in city parks. So what we, after talking with the Parks Department, originally food trucks was not able to vend in any city park. However, they were in Tower Grove South Park, which really the city maintenance Tower Grove South, but we do not, if I'm not mistaken, kind of own it. So they was able to do that Saturdays food truck vending in the park, which has turned to be very successful. So after talking with the Parks Department, we figured out a way for food trucks to be able to vend in city parks. So they will be allowed to vend in city parks on Fridays during certain hours of 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 4 p.m. to the park curfew. And what we set up with the city park in section under rules and regulation, starting in section number M, is that the streets department shall create an annual report of a map of vending zones within the city of St. Louis. So we end up hearing from food truck operators that the map hasn't been updated in a very long time of where they're able to vend and not be able to vend. So on an annual basis, the street department will make sure that that map is updated so people who end up getting their food truck license can know exactly where they are allowed to vend. We also add a language that the street director will now create a portal for comments and complaints regarding mobile food vendors to determine any revocation system. So Ultimately, the streets department will be kind of the accountable body when it comes to an enforcement. When it comes to food trucks, it only makes sense that it's the streets department because when food trucks are operating, they're operating on the street. And if they're going to be operating in parks, it's important for our streets department to know what park they will be in during what time to make sure when it's time to clean up that like no coal or any trash or any grease or anything is left behind that will damage our parks. And we can make sure that we know exactly what food truck are in the parks when necessary. The street director will also formulate additional rules and regulations necessary for the administrator of this chapter. So ultimately, again, when it comes to vending in the parks, it will be the street department that will have the input on where these food trucks can vend. Also, they still have to go through the current process of making sure they get a permit and that they follow all rules and regulations. One of the biggest things that was in the bill when I originally started also that we changed is I had changed it from they're operating from, I want to say 6 a.m., ultimately pushing that all the way to, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. So we went back to the original language in the bill that is 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I heard that that was one of the concerns, as well as we changed that all vendors are able to operate within 100 feet of businesses. I know that was concern not just from the working group, but also members at the committee. Originally in the bill, I scrapped that language to say that they can just operate, but we end up putting in language where they can only operate in those business radiuses in 100 feet. During any closure of business hours of a brick and mortar, a food truck can operate outside of a business, but they would have to get written consent from the actual business owner. So I think it's important to note that, no food truck can just pull up outside of a brick and mortar to be able to operate. They still have to follow the requirements of being in a certain radius of the actual restaurant because we do not want to either have competition or we also don't want to have food trucks taken away from brick and mortar. So we reduced that from 300 feet to 100 feet. And then I think the last thing is you'll see in section 6, when we get to the downtown vending district, that was completely removed, and we went back to the citywide vending district again, that they are only able to operate in District F through L in the commercial district. Again, 100 feet away from brick and mortars unless they have a consent to be able to operate within those outside that business. I do have one more amendment. I think that would complete the whole legislation before we have a discussion on it. There was a concern with the word adjacent and on page 1, line 11. And what we did is just to make sure that that was kind of cleaned up because it said adjacent to commercial district F through L. I think there was a concern is what do that mean if like L or F is adjacent to a neighborhood district? Well, one, they wouldn't be able to operate in that neighborhood district because they only are in F and L. But we also know that, if I'm not mistaken, I think the city ordinance and kind of some state language, streets aren't technically part of like the feet of the business. So just to be clear, to make sure that we're clear of what adjacent meant, the amendment would on line 1, on page 1, line 13, strike out the word shall mean the street that is adjacent to the zoning district, and it would insert shall mean the street that are within or immediately adjacent to the zoning district F through L to just be very clear that they are only to operate in those districts of F through L on those streets and sidewalks. With that, I would take any questions.
Alderman, would you like us to move to adopt Amendment 1?
I would like to make a motion to adopt Amendment 1 to Board Bill 14.
I'll move to adopt Amendment 1 to Board Bill 14 Committee Substitute.
Second.
Second.
Previous roll.
With,
Objection?
I guess we do. Yeah. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Alderman Spencer. Vice Chair Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Saunier.
Aye.
Chair Velazquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys.
With that, your amendment has passed, and we are now looking at Board Bill 14, Committee Substitute as amended, and we will take questions from the, well, actually, hold on. Do you have public testimony?
I do think there's some, yes, there are people here that would like to speak on the legislation.
I'm gonna
I can
do-
start with the public first.
I'll do a quick round, do a quick check-in with the committee, knowing that there is public testimony, and we can always come back. But with that, Vice Chair Oldenburg, any questions for now?
No, none at this time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Alderman Narayan.
No questions right now. Thank you.
Alder Lady Clark Hubbard. Thank you. Alderwoman Keys.
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Sanye.
After public comment, thank you.
Thank you. Great. So we will go ahead and move to public testimony. Madam Clerk?
I have James Dwyer in opposition.
And after public testimony, I totally forgot, I also have Casey here from the mayor's office, but maybe after some of those questions, we could be able to address some of those points. So we'll wait to the public testimony afterward.
Mr. Dwyer, with that, you'll have 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, can you please keep time?
Thank you. So good
Oh,
afternoon.
actually, can you raise your right hand, and do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please go ahead, and thank you for being here today, sir.
So I prepared my comments in the interest of efficiency, so I'm going to read them to you. Please bear with me. So, Madam Chair, committee members, I am James Dwyer, and I am here today to request that you defer action on Board Bill 14 in present form in order to allow sufficient time for continued negotiation and refinement of the bill so that in its final form, it is both equitable and enforceable. In its present form, it is neither. Board Bill 14 was introduced and referred to this committee exactly 9 months ago on April 26, 2024. It was recognized at that time that there are numerous affected parties and conflicting points of view regarding the operation of food trucks, and that competing interests should be considered and reconciled before any proposed legislation is finalized. With leadership from Alderman Aldridge and Greater St. Louis, Inc., arrangements were made for the establishment of a forum in which to accomplish that objective. That process proved to be productive. Issues were identified and negotiated over the course of 2 meetings held last year. Agreement was reached on several critical points, which Alderman Aldridge referred to in his testimony, and several critical points of contention, but the process was stalled in September, and that important work has not been completed. A third and essential meeting was planned, but has not occurred. More effort is required to achieve the declared objectives of this legislation, that is, to expand opportunities for mobile food vendors while providing clear standards and procedures that will address the legitimate concerns of citizens and will help to ensure an optimal outcome for all concerned. Others, I did not expect to be speaking first. I anticipated others were going to speak in front of me, and we're going to address some of the content of the amended bill specifically. I'm thinking of this in broader terms. So my supposition about others preceding me has proven not to be the case, but nevertheless, others have spoken, or soon will, about the many flaws of Board Bill 14 in its current form. I will focus on several refinements and additions that I believe would vastly improve proposed legislation by more clearly defining rights and responsibilities, providing an effective means of enforcement, specifying policies and procedures for registering and adjudicating allegations of noncompliance, and establishing prescribed penalties for violations. Specifically, number one, prescribe a comprehensive list of rules and regulations, adherence to which would be incorporated into each vendor permit as a condition to continued operation.
Mr. Dwyer, that's your time.
You can continue if you want to finish your letter.
I have much more, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Number two, establish a graduated schedule of penalties for violations. I think it's important for people to know up front what they will encounter if they do violate the standards. And I think it's important, therefore, to prescribe them as part of the ordinance. I have some random suggestions, such as first violation, a moderate fine and a warning. Second violation, a significant fine and a final warning. Third violation, revocation of permit for 1 year. Three, provide a procedure for the filing of citizen complaints, including how and to whom complaints are to be presented, and the timing, forum, and process for adjudication. 2 more points. Identify enforcement resources and procedures, including the issuance of citations. And finally, provide for an absolute prohibition on amplified sound devices in the permitted zone. I urge you to resist efforts to advance this imperfect legislation in its present form and instead to defer action to allow adequate time and process for negotiations resulting in an improved and functional board bill. That is the responsible course of action. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you.
And we have Mr. O'Leary online.
Do we have any other
No more
people
speaking.
online?
Oh,
Okay.
No.
Mr. O'Leary, if you could turn on your camera.
I know.
Great. If you could raise your right hand, Mr. O'Leary, and we could hear you, and do you swear to
I'm
tell
gonna
the,
have to say it after the next one.
do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes, Madam Clerk. Can you please keep time again? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Matt O'Leary. I'm here representing the Downtown North STL District, which includes Washington Avenue. Let me first say that I support the expansion of food trucks in the city, but I don't think Board Bill 14 is ready to pass out of committee for several reasons. First, Board of Alderman Rule 67.2 requires a clerk to distribute a committee substitute to committee members at least 24 hours before a public hearing and to post it online at the same time. This committee substitute was only posted on the Board Bill 14 webpage in the last 90 minutes, thus depriving the public of the required notice. Given this, I don't believe this committee has the authority to pass the committee substitute out today. Second, the committee substitute is filled with errors and is simply not ready to be converted into legislation. The worst errors among many are the error that Alderman Aldridge already pointed out. The language was nonsensical as to what the actual areas for the citywide vending districts is. But there's also a major error related to mobile food vendors. I assume this was the food trucks, but this is not a defined term. Sidewalk vendor and vehicle vendors are defined terms, but it's not clear how they relate to mobile food vendors. Under the board bill as drafted, mobile food vendors are not even required to have a license. I don't believe that's the intention, but that's how the ordinance is drafted. There are other drafting problems in Board Bill 14 that have to be figured out before this board bill is ready to be passed into legislation. Third, downtown has by far the greatest experience related to vending and food trucks. While much of that experience has been positive, there have been numerous problem vendors, and this bill does essentially nothing to regulate them. Numerous of the existing vendors downtown operate well outside the permits, particularly along Washington. Some operate without licenses entirely. Some create large amounts of trash and stain the sidewalks with grease from their cooking. Some stay open until 3 a.m. and beyond with their stereos blaring. And there are regular arguments and fights around some of those vendors. But there's been no enforcement mechanism to date to address such abuse. And Board Bill 14 doesn't provide for one, despite greatly expanding the geographic reach of vending. All that Board Bill 14 does is include an admonition that the Director of Streets determine a revocation system and create additional rules and regulations. Problems with this include The enforcement regime should be part of the ordinance itself. There is no funding support for enforcement in the bill. Nothing in Board Bill 14 addresses what city division actually does enforcement, whether SLMPD or streets or someone else. And we haven't seen any enforcement from any division to date downtown. And the streets department is simply unqualified to regulate nuisance uses given its current responsibilities. The reality is that this board bill is only half baked at this point in time and is being pushed in a rushed and inadequate process, and is just not ready to become law. I've heard rumor that even Greater St. Louis is not supportive of this bill advancing at this point in time, and they've been one of the key sponsors. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you for your time. And thank you for your testimony.
We have Kate Har online.
Is that the only other person we have online to testify?
Yes, no one else has
Okay.
raised their hand.
I was going to try and
I
swear
had
everybody online.
a constituent who wanted to speak, but she says she's on the YouTube, but she cannot get into the meeting.
Yeah, she would have to be on Zoom, I believe, Alderwoman.
Okay.
She can get the Zoom link off of if she goes online to the Board of Alderman website and Board of Alderman calendar. This meeting hearing has a direct link to the Zoom to get on Zoom, and then she can raise her hand.
All right. Ms. Cole, did you hear that?
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Is that Amber Cole?
Yes, it is.
Tell her I'll send it to her.
Okay. Ms. Shameen Aldo Lady Shameen will send it to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. In the meantime, Madam Clerk, we can go ahead and
Thanks
move
for
on.
the assist.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Madam Clerk, we can go on ahead to our next testimony.
Ms. Har, if you could turn your camera on, you ready to speak?
There you go. Hello there.
Hi, I need to swear you in before you start, ma'am. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, great. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please keep time for 3 minutes? Go ahead.
Hello there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kate Heher. I'm the Executive Director for the Central West End Business Community Improvement District. And I would like to request that you defer the action of the Board Bill 14 until further consideration is given to the concerns mentioned here today. The proposed bill eliminates guidelines established in the existing bill that would cause issues for the existing businesses and brick and mortar locations in neighborhoods throughout our city. The bill, as proposed, creates a citywide vending district, which includes streets adjacent to the existing commercial districts, and opens up the opportunity for food trucks to vend in or adjacent to these commercial districts. The CWB Business CID does not support the creation of this new district as proposed. Existing businesses are paying top rents and investing significantly in their businesses, including the property upkeep, businesses and licensing fees, marketing and promotion, and under the new proposed bill, allowing the food trucks to operate in the public realm in these commercial districts would be fair and inequitable. Food truck businesses would be taking advantage of the other businesses' investments and efforts at a significantly lower cost, creating unfair competition, while also imposing additional burdens on the commercial districts and burdens and expenses on the commercial districts. The proposed bill also indicates that additional rules and regulations would be established by the Director of Streets. However, these have not been defined as we have heard from others, and it seems premature to adopt this without adoption of those rules and regulations and review of those rules and regulations. We need to clearly define those rules and regulations and establish policies for enforcing those rules and regulations before the board bills would be passed. The proposed language relies on the St. Louis Police Department to monitor pedestrian access and clear sidewalks, but as we know, our officers are already stretched very thin. This should be included in the rules and regulations as a responsibility of the business, and the food truck operator should be penalized when in violation of not following those rules and regulations. Due to these concerns, I believe additional thought and consideration should be given to the establishment of the rules and regulations, monitoring and enforcing before anything moves forward. I do not think that food trucks should be permitted to be operate in commercial districts or within these designated districts without specific authorization of nearby businesses or commercial district managers. We appreciate your considerations for these concerns. We believe that food trucks are great value to the city of St. Louis, but it's imperative that appropriate guidelines be established. Thank you for your consideration. I appreciate your time today.
We have Craig Healer online.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Heller,
And-
can you please raise your right hand?
Yes. Yes.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. You'll have 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, can you please keep time? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Craig Heller. I'd like to start by thanking Alderman Aldridge and all the folks who have worked to date on this bill. My understanding is the intent of the bill is to help create opportunities, and that's something that resonates with me. For over 35 years, I've been using real estate as a platform for economic development to help build a better St. Louis, and most importantly, create opportunities. That's involved building homes in South City, North City, lots of different places. Work to expand educational opportunities and create jobs. Recently got to work with Gateway Global to repurpose a former school into a geospatial training center in Hyde Park. Currently, I'm helping Oliver Properties build a more vibrant and attractive and inclusive downtown. We've recently purchased and are improving numerous problematic multifamily buildings along Washington Avenue. But most importantly, we're also improving the neighborhood around them. This means new street trees, sidewalks, replacing street lights, and much more. But we're also trying to attract and fill the empty storefronts along Washington Avenue. The pandemic took a real toll on the downtown restaurant scene, and many of these storefronts remain vacant. We're currently working with a budding entrepreneur to start his first restaurant. And this minority-owned firm will create a good number of jobs and fill a key retail space. So we'll continue to help this restaurateur and others along Wash Avenue as they try to recover from the pandemic. Many of these restaurants are struggling, and they're trying to deal with high food costs, challenges with staffing, and generally fewer people in downtown. So therefore, we need to be cautious if we are to introduce additional food trucks and street vendors into the downtown market. Both can exist with bricks and mortar restaurants, but more thought needs to be given to how we best do that. So for the betterment of downtown, I therefore request that you pause action on this bill today so that the greater St. Louis-led working group can continue its efforts to refine and improve this legislation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your consideration.
Mr. James Page online.
Madam Clerk, do we have, how many people do we have testifying online? Are they just coming in one by one?
So they just keep raising their hands. So they're not doing it all at one time?
Yeah, I would like to swear them in at one time if it's possible. Is there anybody else online who would like to testify? We can swear you in at once.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I know you've already testified, Mr. Dwyer. All right, going once, going twice.
I'm
We have one
online
more
and
person I'm sending.
available to testify.
If we could just put Ms. Cole and Mr. Page on at once and just swear them both in.
Ms. Cole is not online yet for me to transfer.
Okay, all right. Well, Mr. Page, it's good to see you again, sir. Can you just please raise your right hand so we can swear you in for your testimony? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do.
All right, thank you. You have 3 minutes. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Page, Executive Director of the St. Louis Downtown Neighborhood Association, and I'm a 22-plus year resident of downtown St. Louis. Madam Chair and members of the Special Committee on Reducing Red Tape, I would like to express a few pros and cons regarding Board Bill 14. First and foremost, I am not against food trucks in the city of St. Louis. As an example, I used to purchase lunch from food trucks during Food Truck Tuesdays, we called it, outside of Square's headquarters on North Tucker. I enthusiastically promoted Food Truck Tuesdays while I was at the Board of Aldermen, interviewed patrons, and posted photos of the patrons with their purchases on my Facebook page. I also supported food trucks in other locations, such as outside of the old post office building. It was my honor and pleasure to participate in 2 planning meetings regarding food trucks that were hosted by Greater St. Louis, Inc. in September of 2024. We ended the second meeting with a promise of a third meeting, which never happened. The proposed Board Bill number 14 seeks to expand zones in which food trucks are allowed and permitted. However, I'm not aware of any neighborhoods besides downtown and Central West End that participated in the food truck planning meetings. Lastly, the revenues of the downtown brick and mortar bars and restaurants, especially those on and near Washington Avenue, are balanced on a knife's edge. This was especially true during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is still true today. Why would we introduce competition from food trucks, even though we did agree to place food trucks no closer than 100 feet from the entrance of brick and mortar restaurants? I asked the Special Committee on Reducing Red Tape to retain Board Bill 14 in committee for improved language of the bill, to add enforcement measures, and to consider impacts on all the citizens of St. Louis City. As a reminder of an old saying, haste makes waste. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, do we have?
Isaiah Danfort.
And if you could please turn your camera on if you can hear me.
Hello.
Yes, we will need you to turn your camera on to testify.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Ms.
How are
Cole.
you?
Thank you for joining us. Can you please raise your right hand for us? And do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I affirm.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Yes, good evening, rather good afternoon. I oppose to how this, excuse me? Opposed to, it's no sense for me to really say the same thing everyone already said. Mr. Dyer had a very good thought out plan. But I want to bring it to your attention that the issues we have already regarding food trucks in O'Fallon Park, as well as Fairground Park. We have pop-ups that comes in and they sell alcohol frozen beverages. They sell drugs out of the food trucks. No one's monitoring. We've been asking someone to come over and monitor them for the longest, people doing this. We called the health department. They haven't came over. They said they're afraid. We asked the police. The police department can't come in there because they stressed. We don't have park rangers that come in there. So the ones that really started feeling the brunt is the people that wants to come in the park that can't because people have taken over. So I totally oppose to how this Board Bill 14 has been written. I don't believe it's been really thought out completely how it's going to affect. And let's not even talk about the street department, because the street department has too much on their plate. So at this particular time, unless a thought out plan has been made, I'm asking it to just wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cole.
That's our last speaker.
All right, with that, since that concludes public testimony, would Ms. Milberg from the mayor's office like to address any of the points or speak to any of the updates of the bill?
Good afternoon.
Oop, I think I still have to. I think I still have to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. If you could introduce yourself.
Thank you. Casey Milberg, Policy Director in the Mayor's Office. First, thank you all for your time and for the careful attention that is being given to this topic today. Our office was brought into that collaborative working group initiated by Greater St. Louis and some other stakeholders in September to provide some departmental feedback. And at the outset, I want to thank Alderman Aldridge, among other stakeholders, for working to incorporate all of the department's feedback into the version of legislation you see in front of you today. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the some information responsive to some of the points I've heard today. I did have to come into the hearing a little bit late, so if I did miss something, just please feel free to restate that for me, and I'll be happy to answer that to the best of my abilities. One piece I did want to address is, you know, the point about rules and regulations has been raised. Rules and regulations, there are currently 21 of them pertaining to the food truck vendor program. Those have been in existence since 2011, when this framework was first created and updated regularly by the Department of Streets since then. So I do just want to go through a high-level rundown of what is currently contained within the rules and regulations. And I do want to know, as part of the checklist of 11 different items that food trucks currently have to turn in to the Department of Streets in order to meet the requirements to get the permit, you do have to provide a signed copy of these rules and regulations. So to run through those, the existing rules and regulations are that motorized food trucks, how we define them, single self-contained motorized vehicle with unexpired plates, that you have to provide proof of licensing and registration along with your application. Another requirement is that you have to, food trucks have to comply with all the laws of the city, including but not limited to vending, health, safety, and licensing laws, any and all rules and regs promulgated by the city, license collector, the public safety director, and the health commissioner. We cite to the relevant ordinances. In the rules and regs, we require the motorized food truck vendors to fill an application to a permit. We specify what the fee is. We also require applicants to submit the following information: their insurance information, name the city of St. Louis as additional insured, and indemnify and hold harmless the city, a description photo of how the motorized food truck is to be set up, a proof of motor vehicle licensing and registration, a full-face photograph of the applicant and of their employees, if applicable, their permit fee, of course. We do require them to have the health department food permit and be subject to and comply with all health codes and rules, we do require them, as currently written in the city, the rules and regs, to only vend at locations within the specified allowed districts. So should this pass, that would be one example of an existing regulation that has been on the books for over a decade that we would need to update to be responsive to the parameters outlined in this legislation. We prohibit them from selling food. We only require them to only sell food and beverages and prohibit them from selling alcohol and beer. We require them to dispense beverages in cans or paper and plastic cups, no glass. And we have certain quality standards for the food as well, and require vendors to comply with federal, state, and local regs about the quality of food products. We do require motorized vendors to ensure that a minimum of 4 feet of unobstructed sidewalk remains open for pedestrians and wheelchair traffic, and that all points of sale shall occur on the curbside of the street from a sales window. We also require them to, at the end of every single business day, to remove all items containing debris, whatnot, to remove those and hold them responsible for the cleanliness of the area. And prior to the permit being issued, the vendors are also required to submit a trash disposal plan to the Director of Streets. We also, let's see here, we hold...
Testing.
Yes, Alderwoman Keys, we can hear you.
I hear you, Alderwoman.
Okay, I can't see anything.
I can't either. I'm about to go over to the room, so I'll come right back to you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We require motorized food truck vendors to be parked except when participating in a special event or festival with the consent of the event organizer and pursuant to our city ordinances. We currently prohibit them from vending before 6 a.m. or after 11. We do not allow them to set up barbecue pits, canopies, outdoor seating, or indoor seating in a motorized vehicle. We require them to operate all aspects of the business within the truck and not distribute food and samples.
Hey, can we pause the
You are in
speaker
the
for a
meeting
minute
now.
so we can get back on Zoom?
Yes.
We're still in the meeting, but we're going to
Okay.
pause.
It's
Thank
lovely
you.
to see you today. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. It's a busy Monday. Yeah.
It's a silly part of session.
Indeed. Indeed. Legislative sabotage. This is giving me some flashbacks. I just need some dial-up noise. Yeah, I probably could do a reason.
Okay, I can hear and see now. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right,
Great.
sounds like we're back on.
STLTV, are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Milberg. Please continue.
Okay. Let's see. We prohibit motorized vendors from playing loud music, amplified music, how it's termed. We prohibit vendors from idling while serving food unless their operation is essential to to producing the product sold, to reduce fumes, exhaust, things like that. At the vendor's expense, they do have to provide all equipment necessary for the items for sale and the conduct of the business. The city does not provide storage areas, water, electric, other utilities. We prohibit any intimidation, disorderly behavior, or misconduct, including not just to the public but other vendors. We also do not allow for their permit to be assignable in part or in whole to another vendor. And we also specify that the Department of Streets can revoke any licenses issued if the vendor violates any of these provisions or any rules and regs promulgated. In addition, on the penalties piece, I do want to call your attention to the existing penalties that are provided under the relevant city code. Chapter 8.108A is where you can find those. This bill does not change any of those. Violation, we have a lot of different penalties for that. It includes confiscation and release of any goods. We also have financial penalties. So if you violate any provision of the chapter, or if you furnish any false information to us in a license or permit application, you're subject to a fine of not less than 100, but not more than 500, or a term of imprisonment of up to 90 days or both. We also allow the license collector to revoke any vendor as well, and the licensees are not entitled to a refund of the fees paid for any licenses. So did just want to make sure that the information about the rules and regs and the penalties as they exist are set forward. And of course, any rules and regs would be accordingly updated to the provisions of this legislation were it to pass. Some of the feedback that our departments provided that they appreciated being incorporated into this bill was their ability to continue to promulgate additional regulations to ensure that anything coming out of this bill could be built further into our existing regulations. I know that we had some conversation about why are we using that reference to the zoning district. That was to capture the commercial and industrial districts and just the streets therein. That terminology, I think that Alderman Aldridge explained it perfectly, and that was on the recommendation of our zoning division, was to ensure that we are limiting it to the streets located within commercial and industrial districts. That is the best word usage to accommodate that. And then I think that captures most, and then of course we do appreciate the clear spelling out at the request of our Department of Health to specify that, you do have to have that current Department of Health food license. Currently that exists within the rules and regs that we just ran through, but having that spelled out specifically up front in city ordinance is really appreciated by the Department of Health too. So we appreciate all the intentionality of the conversation on this, the ability to try to find a way to support our small business community, try to find a way to strike a balance between making sure that these are operating in just commercial and industrial areas. And we also appreciate just the aldermen and convening such a broad group of folks and being responsive to all the needs of our departments. So, and I don't know if that captured all the questions raised. If not, happy to try to speak to anything else that I missed.
Thank you, Ms. Milberg. I'm going to pivot to the committee to see if they have any questions. I know Alderman Oldenburg had to hop off. Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I just have a couple of questions, and they're really more nuts and bolts questions than widespread, because we've been going over this for close to a year now. So can you share with me a little bit of the reasoning behind the time slots for operating in parks? Why we go 11 to 2 and then 4? Like, is there a reason for a gap there?
Do you want to speak to that?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So there's specific time slots for operating in the city parks, 11 to 2 and then 4 to curfew. And on the changes, I guess you can't, it says you can't double dip essentially. So does that mean that I can't bring my food truck out there and serve lunch and then dinner to people? I have to pick one or the other?
Yes, that's a goal, and I know from the Parks Department, I think those were kind of the best times that they'll be able to make sure that like manpower would be around on top of their everyday duties that they would have. With these being put in the portal ahead of time, they would know when people are scheduled to go to the parks, but want to set certain times so it's just not 24 hours to have staff trying to know when they need to go out to the park, that we're setting a precedent of certain times that people know when they're able to go to the park on these Fridays outside of Tower Grove, because they're kind of a different situation.
Thank you for that. And then have we laid out, I know that we spoke for quite some time about what an appropriate buffer was, and 300 is a long way, and the 300 feet is a long way in the city. I know it's been removed down to 100 feet now. One of the things that we had discussed was essentially obtaining written permission from a business if you wanted to operate within that buffer zone, if they, their kitchen was not open on a Tuesday or whatever. Have we laid out how to do that, or is that something that the streets department's going to need to deal with within the rulemaking process after this?
Good question, thank you. So in section 1, in the amendment to 8.10 A.020, we did lay out, and that was one of the conversations we had as a group of trying to figure out what that buffer was. I know the Restaurant Association, who also is part of that conversation, they left today, but as far as the restaurants that they represent are fine with the 100 feet, and that was one of the kind of conversations we had. And then regardless, we continue to ensure that no food truck can operate directly in front of a business. And then we did come up with, say, like you say, a restaurant is closed during certain business hours, and if a food truck get written permission from that actual operator, that they are able to operate outside of that restaurant. But they only can do that if they have written permission.
Okay, got it. And are they going to have to like file that written permission with the city, or is that just something that the inspector walks up and goes, hey, you're pretty close here, and you?
So those documents will have to be all committed in the portal when they ask for that from the streets department. So that would have to be part of their application if they're asking to vend right outside of a business, that they have to get that document.
Got it. Yeah, I think there are a few more just nuts and bolts things here. I understand that we're getting close to the end of the session, and the desire to kind of kick the can forward. Would you be committed to continuing to work towards addressing some of these concerns as we move forward, whether that be through amendments or a floor substitute or whatever needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I think it was, which we'll get to that before the meeting is ended, maybe the timing of when it was posted, because I know some of Mr. Jim's concern, who was part of the working group, far as citizens' complaints, how there's a complaint process that's in the legislation, as well as identifying the enforcement, which would be the streets department. Maybe it just need to been posted in the proper time so people can see it. But, you know, I did speak with, in lieu of transparency, GSL, who was at the table, as well as DNA as of this morning, of some of those concerns, which seem to be more around language, and willing to adopt those if we have to have another committee hearing, or adopt them on the floor of some of those concerns that was brought to my attention this morning.
Okay. Thank you for that. At this point, I'll yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alder Lady Clark Hubbard.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman, and members of the committee. Thank you for your continued efforts and the commitment to this. I love the way you are listening, right, to the community, Mr. Dwyer. You know how much respect I have for you. The Neighborhood Alliance. If anybody from the Neighborhood Alliance is watching, I know my communities that are represented in the Neighborhood Alliance, you see the value in that, right, with them showing up, speaking up, and now there will be some, what sounds like from the sponsors, some changes that will immediately meet those concerns, and then some others, since it sounds like we might do some different action items on this. So again, thank you. My question was answered, and I'll be looking forward to help support you in moving this forward.
Thank you, Alder Lady. Alderwoman Keys, questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm beginning to wonder if this is something that might better be um, moved along the guidelines similarly to possibly the excise commission, in that in my ward, I have different issues as it relates to food trucks and how they operate and the lack of enforcement. This is really problematic, and I don't know that it's necessarily a one-size-fits-all for the city of St. Louis. Like former Alderman Page stated, you know, I'm not against food trucks. I have done my share of patronizing them. But I do have a concern as that I have two major parks here in the 11th Ward, and a bunch of smaller parks. And again, we have different issues, and this can't be the size fit for all of us. And so there needs to be some further work done, maybe even excluding uh, particular wards, and let those alders and community decide how they move forward, as opposed to saying, oh yeah, this is what we're going to do for all of them. My ward, as most of you may know, stretches from a little past West Florissant all the way over to Shodo. So we got a gigantic footprint and a lot of room in between. A lot of my smaller businesses and restaurants really depend on that revenue, and probably really could not stand the pressure of having a food truck, even if it's within 100 feet of their establishment, for them to survive. So again, more dialogue, I believe, is needed.
Thank you, Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Sanye.
Hi, members of the committee, Chairwoman. Thank you, Alderman Aldridge, for your work on this legislation. I did have a few questions. You know, I know within the 7th Ward, we do have 2 community improvement districts and just hubs of businesses and restaurants that are very much still recovering and still struggling since the pandemic. And so I know the question has kind of been raised, kind of has not, but could you speak to the specific regulations in the bill as far as distance requirements from restaurants who are concerned about competing for customers that are already hard to find?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I know some of the regulations Ms. Milberg talked about, but as far as that distance language, originally in the bill, it actually had distance language of 300 feet. So And then in my iteration of the original ordinance, and then I tried to just get rid of the distance. But what we landed on as the group and the working groups, that it would have to be 100 feet. So there is still a distance that food trucks would have to operate from a brick and mortar. And most of the time, like on the Cherokee area or downtown, Wash Ave, there's multiple restaurants. So it's even kind of more of a greater distance because that 100 feet from each restaurant. So it's a 100 feet radius from a brick and mortar that a food truck cannot operate. And only way that they could operate in front of that restaurant is that the restaurant would have to give that food truck written permission to do that, which most likely would be the hours of operations that they're not operating, not during the same time that they are operating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Sonier. Just one other question for you, Alderman. I know we briefly talked about it, but I think it's helpful to know because you clarified it for me. Similarly, actually, the Alderwoman from the 7th and I share a community improvement district. Can you just kind of go over how this is commercial zones and not just that those are how they're defined is not, we're not just talking about like a SID or a district, but it's actually, the definition is actually related to the zoning?
Absolutely, yes. So this doesn't necessarily touch any SIDs or SBDs. Of course, we have SBDs throughout the whole city, and SIDs. I have several, actually 2 now downtown, but this is more focused on zoning, commercial zoning. So for your area, Alderwoman Velasquez, I know you have South Grand, which I want to say maybe starts at Arsenal going down to about Gravois. So in that whole strip, a food truck cannot be able to operate in that area if they are in a 100 feet radius. So when we really get to that Arsenal kind of corner to that Gravois, and I want to say it actually goes up a little further to where Ruler Foods is, but it would be really difficult for a food truck to operate outside of a brick and mortar because, as you know, as you drive down Grand and Arsenal, there's restaurant after restaurant after restaurant after restaurant, and they could not operate outside of those restaurants within 100 feet unless they have written permission, and then they couldn't enter the neighborhood because that would not be through zone F through L. That would be residential, not commercial.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. And just also for the record, you have had conversations with streets about, their capacity and ability to track the, what you're requiring in this legislation.
Yes, ma'am. They were actually at the table for one of the meetings, and the language that we implemented when it came to the parks was language that we was able to work with Commissioner Hagelman. I know the Alderwoman from the 11th brought up excise. I hear her, but excise has less staff, and they are not, they already work hard on trying to get like liquor license. And like I say, they don't have, unlike the streets department that has more staff that have the manpower to be able to go out in the community to make sure if it is in a park on a Friday. So we're not talking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or Saturdays and Sundays. It would only be on a Friday that they'll be able to operate in a park. They have the manpower, and they were able to come up with these requirements around the park. I am willing to look at how we can maybe strengthen some of that language. I do get the concerns from the Alderwoman of the 11th, how we can strengthen it to maybe be tailored so it's more clear what parks they can operate in. Or have a little bit more of communication between the community and the Parks Department. But to your question, yes, we have talked to the park commissioner and was there to make sure that this is something the department can do.
Great, thank you. I have no other questions.
All right. Before I make a certain type of motion, I do want to thank the several entities that have been coming to the table on this piece of legislation. I think one of the members who spoke today from the public stated the time requirement of postage, and I just want to go on record. This was sent out to committee members last week, but it does seem that the postage of this on the website was today. And as somebody who want to make sure that we are following the rules, and that the community, regardless if we 100% agree or 50% or don't at all, I think it's always important for the community to see exactly what we're voting on so that they could be able to dive into that. So I, by protocol, would like to actually pull back, make a motion to not reconsider my amendment to Board Bill 151. I was about to say 153. I know the Alderwoman from the 7th will love that.
Board
I'd
Bill
like
14?
to consider my amendment to Board Bill 114 committee substitute.
I don't know the
14,
official
not 114.
language for undoing an amendment, but I move to
Being on the prevailing side of the vote on the amendment, I move that we reconsider that vote.
I second that motion. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Narayan,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Keys,
No.
Alderwoman Sanye,
Aye.
Chair Velasquez,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Oldenburg. We have 4 aye votes, 1 no.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So with that, we will be reviewing,
Yes, and I just want to be clear for the public.
well, no, but now we're looking at just Board Bill 14 committee substitute, not amendment.
Yes, and for the public and for all of our colleagues, so I don't confuse you, what we're doing is we're not voting on it. We're reconsidering the amendments, and now we will reconsider the committee substitute to make sure that since it was not in time, that it should not be in front of the body. So I just want to be clear.
So if I'm just understanding, do you reconsider adopting the substitute as well?
Yes.
Do you want to say that again, Alderman
Sure.
Ryan?
Being on the prevailing side of the vote, adopt the committee, Board Bill 14 committee substitute, I move that we reconsider that vote.
Second. Previous roll. Great. Okay. Alderman Aldrich, you've been, we are still looking at, we are going to consider, we're now considering Board Bill 14 in its original non-committee substitute, non-amended form.
Yes, ma'am. And the internet didn't go out. We would have heard just a hearing on it last week, but it looked like we're just doing a hearing on it this week. I appreciate all the input on this, and I will work with the chairwoman to hopefully schedule a meeting this week so that we can be able to move this forward and make sure that it's posted in proper time.
I would say you're recognized to close, but it sounds like that is your close.
I guess we can.
Sounds like you're asking for this to be held in committee.
Yes, I'm asking for it to be held in committee.
We will hold Board Bill 14 in committee. We're holding Board Bill 14 in committee. Do we need to make a motion to do that?
Nope.
No. All right, we'll hold Board Bill 14 in committee. Thank you, Alderman Aldrich. And with that, Madam Clerk, do we have any written testimony?
We have 1 written testimony.
Great, we'll just make sure that's in the drive. And then I would announce a next meeting for the Special Committee on Red Tape, but I want to just confer with my colleagues and the clerk before I announce that, so just stay tuned. We will plan on scheduling a meeting later this week. I just want to finalize things before I say that. So with that, I will entertain a motion for absent alderman. I think that's Alderwoman Spencer. Is there a motion to excuse Alderwoman Spencer from today's meeting?
I move that we excuse Alderwoman Spencer for necessary.
All right, with that, I will also entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We do need to vote.
Second.
What do we need to vote on? Oh, I'm sorry. We do need to vote on the excused alderman. All in favor of excusing Alderwoman Spencer?
Aye.
Please say aye. All right,
Aye.
with that, is our motion to excuse still good? With that, I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Aye. Second.
Aye.
Thank you.